Friday the 13th of September, and I am told for the first time in 5 years, also a full moon on Friday the 13th, which I hope has nothing to do with the fate of my buffaloes tomorrow, but you never know. It sure has had to do with what's happened to interest rates. A global interest rate panic began on the 1st of August. Long-term treasuries, the 10-year treasury note fell in yield from just over 2 to under 1.5, and took mortgage rates from just north of 4 all the way down to 3.5 from time to time. Almost that entire move has reversed in the last 5 business days. Panics are funny things. You get one going, and people buy who are panicked, but they force other people to buy who aren't panicked, but they have to buy because they're on the wrong side of the market. They're long when they should be short, and short when they should be long. And panics, if panics are not supported by new good reason to run away flapping your arms and do insane things, you stop. And that's what happened. The panic early in August was triggered by an exchange of tariffs between the United States and China, and the presumption that a world outside the United States would suffer economic damage, and quickly, and the world's central banks would have to begin to cut their interest rates deeply in order to intercept and offset the damage done by these tariffs. It took a month and a week for everybody to take a deep breath and realize that the U.S. data does not support any of that. There has still been a move in the United States at the Fed to cut interest rates to intercept, to preempt the chance that damage from overseas would come here. But there isn't any coming here, not yet. Overseas economies are slowing down, but there's suspicious stuff in the supply chains which have been disrupted by the tariffs, which indicate that they're more elastic than we thought. The tariffs are bad news for China, but they're the best news that ever happened for Vietnam, and so it goes. The reversal in rates is really quite something just in these last few days. It's not enough to damage housing. It's going to end a refinance party for the time being. There may be some people who entered the housing market because they joined the panic. But in order to do any damage to housing, we will need to go further. Now, the black comedy involved, the European Central Bank yesterday brought in a new round of very substantial stimulus, deeper negative interest rates and a resumption of quantitative easing. And interest rates rose. Now, the jackdaws in the marketplace who don't like the Fed or central banks take a piece of news like that and say, none of this matters, we don't need those people, it's a waste of time, they cause more trouble than they solve. The reality is that if a giant central bank like the European Central Bank enters the marketplace with new stimulus, the market thinks about it overnight and thinks, might work. And so successively, since the Great Recession, as central banks have entered with powerful stimulus, it's been routine for rates to go up for a while until it's clear that the stimulus isn't really going to work. And I suspect that that's the case now. The real underpinnings, the deep underpinnings of trouble in overseas markets have to do with China and Germany and their mania to run trade surpluses, which means somebody has to buy all that stuff. And if you are intent on running a trade surplus for long enough, you do so much damage to your customers, often through currencies, and if not through interest rates or both, that they can't buy your stuff anymore. For trade to work, it needs to be bilateral. Even among very dissimilar economies, if you run a big trade surplus, you are doing damage to the other side. So my hunch is that the panic down has now been at a reciprocal panic up, and more likely than not, we'll settle down a little under here. The Fed's going to meet next week, and in complete lunacy, markets assumed that the Fed would ease 3 or 4 more quarter points into the winter. The odds now are that Chair Powell on Thursday, the 18th, which Wednesday, is going to walk to a microphone to say that actually the Fed has become data dependent and we'll have to see some more data before it knows if it's going to do anything else, which is going to make one senior U.S. elected official, it's going to turn him into a volcano. So brace yourself. Have a good weekend.